It was a Tuesday morning when Robert collapsed in his kitchen. Just minutes before, he had been feeling perfectly fine, going through his usual morning routine that he'd followed religiously for the past 15 years. The paramedics found him unconscious on the floor, his coffee mug shattered beside him, the dark liquid spreading across the white tiles like a warning he never saw coming. At 72, Robert had always prided himself on being healthy. He took his medications, watched his diet reasonably well, and even managed to get some exercise most days. But what he didn't know, what his doctor had never warned him about, was that his cherished morning ritual was slowly, silently, methodically damaging his heart with every single day that passed. You see, Robert's story isn't unique. Across the country, millions of people over 60 are unknowingly putting their hearts at risk every single morning, following a habit so common, so seemingly innocent, that most doctors don't even think to mention it. And the terrifying part? The damage is cumulative, building up day after day, year after year, until one morning, like Robert's, the heart simply can't take it anymore. If you're over 60 and you follow this particular morning routine, your heart could be in serious danger right now. And the worst part? You probably have no idea it's happening. Your heart isn't sending you obvious warning signals. There's no chest pain, no shortness of breath, no dramatic symptoms, just a quiet, relentless assault on one of your most vital organs. But here's what gives me hope, and what should give you hope too. Once you understand what's happening, once you know what this dangerous habit is and why it's so harmful, you can take simple steps to protect yourself. You can literally add years to your life and dramatically reduce your risk of heart attack, stroke, and sudden cardiac death. Before we dive deeper into this life-threatening morning habit, I want to know where you're joining me from today. Drop a comment below with your age and location, and feel free to share any concerns you have about your heart health. Your story might help someone else in our community. And please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because the information we share here could truly save your life or the life of someone you love. Now let's talk about what happened to Robert and why his morning routine became a ticking time bomb. Robert's morning started the same way it had for years. The alarm would go off at 6:30, and within minutes he'd be up and moving. He was proud of his efficiency, proud of how quickly he could transition from sleep to full activity. No lying in bed, no gradual awakening. Robert believed in seizing the day, in making every moment count. Within 5 minutes of his alarm, he was in the bathroom, washing his face with cold water to wake himself up fully. Then straight to the kitchen to start the coffee, check the weather, and begin planning his day. By 7 o'clock, he was usually dressed and ready to tackle whatever needed to be done. His friends admired his energy, his get-up-and-go attitude. "I wish I had your motivation," they would say. "I wish I could jump out of bed like you do." Robert would smile and tell them it was all about discipline, about training yourself to be productive from the moment you wake up. What Robert didn't understand, what none of his well-meaning friends understood, was that this rapid transition from sleep to full activity was creating a perfect storm of cardiovascular stress that was slowly destroying his heart. You see, when we sleep, our bodies enter a state of profound rest and recovery. Our heart rate slows down, our blood pressure drops, our nervous system shifts into a calm, restorative mode. This isn't just relaxation, this is essential healing time, when our cardiovascular system gets a chance to repair and regenerate. But when we jolt ourselves awake and immediately launch into activity, we force our cardiovascular system to make a dramatic, sudden shift that it's simply not designed to handle, especially as we age. Within minutes, we're asking our heart to go from its slow, steady sleep rhythm to the rapid, forceful pumping required for full daytime activity. Think about it this way. Imagine you're driving a car that's been parked in freezing weather all night. Would you start it up and immediately floor the gas pedal, demanding maximum performance? Of course not. You'd let it warm up gradually, allowing the engine oil to circulate, the parts to expand, the systems to come online slowly and safely. Your heart is infinitely more complex and precious than any car engine, yet millions of people over 60 are essentially flooring the gas pedal on their cardiovascular system every single morning, demanding instant performance from an organ that needs time to transition safely from rest to activity. The medical community has known about this phenomenon for decades, but somehow this crucial information rarely makes it to the people who need it most. They call it the morning surge, and it's responsible for more heart attacks and strokes than most people realize. During those first few hours after waking, especially if you wake up abruptly and immediately become active, your body experiences a sudden spike in stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. Your blood pressure can jump by 20, 30, even 40 points within minutes. Your heart rate accelerates rapidly. Your blood becomes more likely to clot. The arteries that supply blood to your heart muscle can actually spasm, reducing blood flow precisely when your heart needs it most. For younger people, healthy cardiovascular systems can usually handle this morning surge without too much trouble. But after 60, our hearts become less resilient, our arteries stiffer, our ability to adapt to sudden changes diminished. The morning surge that might have been manageable at 40 becomes a dangerous assault at 70. Studies have shown that heart attacks are 40% more likely to occur in the morning hours than at any other time of day. Strokes follow a similar pattern. The medical term is circadian variation, and it's directly linked to how we handle the transition from sleep to wakefulness. Robert's cardiologist explained it to him later, after the damage was done. Your heart had been under stress every morning for years, the doctor said. Every time you jumped out of bed and immediately started your day, you were essentially shocking your cardiovascular system. Over time, this repeated stress weakened your heart muscle, damaged your arteries, and created the conditions that led to your collapse. But Robert's story, devastating as it was, also contains hope. Because once he understood what had been happening, once he learned how to modify his morning routine to protect his heart, he was able to not only recover, but actually improve his cardiovascular health beyond where it had been in years. The changes he made were simple, gentle, and required no expensive equipment, no complicated medical procedures, no dramatic lifestyle overhaul, just a different approach to those crucial first hours of the day. And that's exactly what we're going to explore next, how to transform your morning routine from a cardiovascular threat into a powerful tool for heart protection and longevity. The solution isn't about becoming lazy or unmotivated. It's not about lying in bed for hours or abandoning your productive morning habits. It's about working with your body's natural rhythms instead of against them, giving your heart the gentle transition it needs to serve you safely for years to come. Let me share with you the exact steps that saved Robert's life and could save yours too. The first and most crucial change Robert made was something his cardiologist called the 5-minute rule. Instead of jumping out of bed the moment his alarm went off, Robert learned to spend 5 full minutes transitioning gradually from sleep to wakefulness. This wasn't 5 minutes of lying there feeling guilty about wasting time. This was 5 minutes of deliberate heart-protective activity that his cardiologist assured him was one of the most important things he could do for his cardiovascular health. Here's exactly what Robert's new morning routine looked like, and what yours should look like too, if you want to protect your heart from the dangerous morning surge. When the alarm goes off, instead of immediately sitting up or getting out of bed, Robert learned to lie still for a moment and take 3 deep, slow breaths. Not quick, shallow breaths, but real, deliberate breathing that signals to his nervous system that it's time for a gentle transition, not an emergency response. During those first deep breaths, Robert would mentally scan his body, noticing how he felt, checking in with his heart rate, his energy level, any stiffness or soreness from sleep. This wasn't hypochondria or excessive self-focus. This was giving his brain and his cardiovascular system time to communicate, to coordinate the transition from sleep to wakefulness. After those initial breaths, Robert would slowly start to move, but still lying down. Gentle ankle circles, easy shoulder rolls, maybe stretching his arms overhead or bending his knees toward his chest. Nothing vigorous, nothing that would spike his heart rate or blood pressure. Just gentle movement to help his circulation gradually increase, to wake up his muscles slowly and safely. Then, and only then, would Robert slowly sit up on the edge of the bed. Not jumping up, not launching into immediate activity, but sitting quietly for another minute or two, allowing his blood pressure to adjust to the change in position, giving his heart time to adapt to pumping blood against gravity. Even this simple change, sitting on the edge of the bed for a minute or two before standing, can reduce the morning blood pressure spike by as much as 15 points. For someone over 60, this reduction could be the difference between a safe morning and a medical emergency. From the edge of the bed, Robert would slowly stand, again pausing for a moment to let his cardiovascular system adjust. Then he would walk slowly to the bathroom, moving deliberately rather than rushing, keeping his heart rate and blood pressure in a safe, gradual climb rather than the dangerous spike he had unknowingly created for years. Even his face-washing routine changed. Instead of splashing cold water on his face to shock himself awake, Robert learned to use lukewarm water, gently washing his face and taking a moment to look at himself in the mirror, to check in with how he was feeling, to maintain that gentle, gradual transition his heart needed. The entire process, from alarm to being fully ready to start his day, took maybe 5 minutes longer than his old routine. 5 minutes that his cardiologist told him could literally add years to his life. But the benefits went far beyond just heart protection. Robert discovered that this gentler morning transition actually gave him more energy throughout the day, not less. His thinking was clearer, his mood more stable, his overall sense of well-being significantly improved. He also noticed that his blood pressure, which had been creeping upward for years despite medication, began to stabilize and even improve slightly. His doctor was able to reduce one of his blood pressure medications, something they hadn't thought possible just months before. The science behind this improvement is fascinating and gives us hope for what's possible when we work with our bodies instead of against them. When you avoid the morning cardiovascular surge, you're not just protecting your heart in that moment. You're actually training your entire cardiovascular system to be more resilient, more adaptable, better able to handle the normal stresses of daily life. Think of it like physical therapy for your heart and blood vessels. Every time you practice this gentle morning transition, you're teaching your cardiovascular system that it doesn't need to operate in emergency mode. You're creating new neural pathways that support calm, steady cardiovascular function rather than the fight-or-flight response that had been damaging Robert's heart for years. The stress hormones that spike during abrupt morning awakenings don't just affect your heart for a few minutes and then disappear. Cortisol and adrenaline can remain elevated for hours, creating a state of chronic cardiovascular stress that accumulates over time. By avoiding that initial spike, you're protecting yourself from hours of unnecessary strain on your heart and blood vessels. Blood clotting factors also respond positively to gentler morning transitions. The blood clotting proteins that spike dangerously during abrupt awakenings remain more stable when you wake up gradually, reducing your risk of the clots that can cause heart attacks and strokes. Even your body's natural blood pressure rhythms improve when you avoid shocking your system awake. Instead of the dramatic morning spike followed by irregular fluctuations throughout the day, people who practice gentle morning transitions often develop more stable, healthy blood pressure patterns that persist long after those first few minutes of the day. But Robert's transformation involved more than just those first 5 minutes in bed. He also learned about other aspects of his morning routine that had been unknowingly stressing his cardiovascular system. His coffee habit, for instance, needed some adjustment. Not elimination, Robert was relieved to learn, but modification in timing and approach that could make the difference between cardiovascular protection and cardiovascular risk. Let's talk about that next, because if you're like most people over 60, your morning coffee routine could be either helping or harming your heart, depending on how and when you approach it. Coffee had always been Robert's morning fuel, his get-up-and-go in a cup. He would brew it strong and drink it fast, usually finishing his first cup within 15 minutes of waking up. It was part of his efficient, no-nonsense morning routine that he thought was serving him well. What Robert didn't know was that combining rapid caffeine consumption with the natural morning surge of stress hormones was creating a perfect storm of cardiovascular stress that was pushing his heart and blood vessels to their limits every single day. Here's what happens in your body when you drink coffee quickly after waking up, especially if you're over 60. Caffeine is a powerful stimulant that increases heart rate, raises blood pressure, and triggers the release of stress hormones. Under normal circumstances, a healthy cardiovascular system can handle these effects without too much trouble. But in the morning, your body is already experiencing a natural surge of cortisol and adrenaline as part of your circadian rhythm. When you add a large dose of caffeine on top of these already elevated stress hormones, you're essentially doubling down on cardiovascular stimulation at the exact time when your heart and blood vessels are most vulnerable. The result is a blood pressure spike that can be dramatically higher than what either the natural morning surge or the caffeine would create alone. Your heart rate can jump to levels that put significant strain on your cardiovascular system. Your arteries can constrict at precisely the moment when your heart needs maximum blood flow to handle the increased demands of waking up and becoming active. For someone over 60, whose cardiovascular system is naturally less resilient than it once was, this combination can be dangerous enough to trigger a heart attack or stroke. The statistics are sobering. Studies have shown that the risk of heart attack in the 3 hours after drinking coffee is significantly higher than at other times of day, and this risk is most pronounced in people over 60 who drink coffee within the first hour of waking. But here's the good news, and this is what Robert's cardiologist taught him. You don't have to give up coffee to protect your heart. You just have to be smarter about when and how you consume it. The key is timing. Instead of drinking coffee immediately upon waking, Robert learned to wait at least 30 to 60 minutes after getting out of bed before having his first cup. This gives his natural stress hormones time to level off from their morning peak, reducing the cumulative cardiovascular impact of the caffeine. During that first 30 to 60 minutes, Robert would hydrate with water instead. Dehydration from sleeping can actually contribute to the dangerous morning blood pressure spike, so starting the day with water helps protect the cardiovascular system while you wait for the optimal time for coffee. When Robert did have his coffee, he learned to drink it more slowly, sipping it over 15 to 20 minutes, rather than downing it quickly. This slower consumption allows your body to process the caffeine more gradually, avoiding the sharp spikes in heart rate and blood pressure that come from rapid caffeine intake. He also discovered that having something small to eat with his coffee, even just a piece of toast or a few nuts, helped moderate the cardiovascular effects of the caffeine. Food slows caffeine absorption and provides your body with nutrients that support stable blood sugar and cardiovascular function. The amount of coffee mattered too. Robert had been drinking large, strong cups that contained far more caffeine than his aging cardiovascular system could handle safely. His cardiologist recommended limiting himself to one moderate cup, about 8 ounces, with no more than 100 milligrams of caffeine. To put this in perspective, a typical large coffee shop coffee can contain 300 to 400 milligrams of caffeine, 3 to 4 times what's safe for most people over 60 to consume in the morning. That single large coffee was delivering enough caffeine to create dangerous cardiovascular stress, especially when combined with the natural morning hormone surge. Robert also learned about the difference between different types of coffee and their effects on the cardiovascular system. Dark roast coffee, which he had always preferred for its strong flavor, actually contains less caffeine than light roast, making it a better choice for morning consumption. Cold brew coffee, while trendy, is often much higher in caffeine and can be particularly problematic for people over 60. Even decaf coffee, Robert discovered, isn't completely caffeine-free and can still contribute to morning cardiovascular stress if consumed too quickly or in large quantities. True caffeine elimination, while not necessary for most people, might be appropriate for those with severe heart conditions or extremely sensitive cardiovascular systems. But perhaps the most important lesson Robert learned about his morning coffee routine was the power of mindfulness. Instead of gulping his coffee while rushing around getting ready, he learned to sit quietly for a few minutes, sipping slowly, using the time to ease into his day rather than accelerate into it. This mindful coffee drinking became a form of meditation for Robert, a transition period between the gentle awakening he had learned to practice and the more active parts of his day. The warm cup in his hands, the aroma, the ritual of slow sipping, all contributed to maintaining the calm, protective state his cardiovascular system needed. The changes in Robert's energy levels and overall well-being were remarkable. Instead of the jittery, anxious feeling he had unknowingly lived with for years, Robert felt calm and alert. His thinking was clearer, his mood more stable, and most importantly, his heart felt stronger and more resilient. His blood pressure readings showed the impact of these changes. The dangerous morning spikes that had been pushing his numbers into concerning territory were dramatically reduced. His resting heart rate, which had been elevated due to chronic caffeine overstimulation, returned to healthier levels. But coffee wasn't the only part of Robert's morning routine that needed attention. The way he approached getting dressed, moving around his house, and preparing for his day were all contributing to unnecessary cardiovascular stress that could be easily modified for better heart protection. Let me share with you the other critical changes Robert made that transformed his mornings from a cardiovascular threat into a powerful tool for heart health and longevity. Temperature played a bigger role in Robert's morning cardiovascular stress than he had ever imagined. His habit of taking hot showers immediately after waking up was another piece of the dangerous puzzle that had been slowly damaging his heart for years. Hot water, especially when you're already experiencing the natural morning surge of stress hormones, causes blood vessels to dilate rapidly while simultaneously increasing heart rate to maintain blood pressure. For a cardiovascular system that's already stressed from abrupt awakening, this additional demand can push heart rate and blood pressure to dangerous levels. Robert's cardiologist explained that the combination of hot water and morning hormone surges could increase heart attack risk by as much as 70% in the first hour after waking. The statistics were sobering, but the solution was simple. Instead of hot showers, Robert learned to start with lukewarm water, gradually increasing the temperature as his body adjusted. This gentle approach allowed his cardiovascular system to adapt slowly, rather than being shocked into overdrive. Even better, he discovered that ending his shower with 30 seconds of cooler water actually helped stabilize his heart rate and blood pressure for the rest of the morning. The science behind this temperature modulation is fascinating. When you expose your body to gradually changing temperatures rather than extreme ones, you're training your cardiovascular system to be more adaptable and resilient. The gentle temperature changes stimulate healthy blood vessel function without creating dangerous spikes in heart rate or blood pressure. Robert also learned about the importance of bathroom ventilation during his morning routine. Steam and humidity from hot showers can create additional cardiovascular stress, especially for people over 60 whose bodies are less efficient at regulating temperature. Ensuring proper ventilation helped maintain a comfortable environment that supported rather than stressed his cardiovascular system. The air temperature in his home mattered too. Robert had always kept his house quite warm, especially in winter, thinking it was more comfortable for someone his age. But his cardiologist helped him understand that overly warm environments in the morning can contribute to cardiovascular stress by forcing the heart to work harder to regulate body temperature. A slightly cooler home environment, around 68 to 70 degrees, helped Robert's cardiovascular system maintain better stability during those crucial morning hours. The cooler air helped prevent the blood vessel dilation that contributes to morning blood pressure spikes, while still being comfortable for daily activities. The relationship between temperature and cardiovascular health becomes even more important as we age. Older adults are more sensitive to temperature changes because their cardiovascular systems are less able to adapt quickly. What might be a minor temperature variation for a younger person can create significant stress for someone over 60. Robert discovered that even his clothing choices played a role in his morning cardiovascular health. Tight clothing, especially around the neck, chest, or waist, can restrict circulation and add unnecessary stress to the cardiovascular system. He learned to choose looser, more comfortable clothing for the first few hours of his day, allowing his blood to circulate freely as his body completed its transition from sleep to full activity. The fabric of his clothing mattered too. Natural, breathable fabrics like cotton helped his body regulate temperature more effectively than synthetic materials that could trap heat and moisture, creating additional stress on his cardiovascular system during the vulnerable morning hours. Even the act of getting dressed became more mindful for Robert. Instead of rushing to put on his clothes, he learned to dress slowly and deliberately, avoiding the sudden movements and position changes that could spike his blood pressure. Sitting down to put on socks and shoes, for instance, helped prevent the blood pressure fluctuations that can occur when bending over repeatedly. The speed at which Robert moved around his house in the morning was another crucial factor that his cardiologist emphasized. His old habit of rushing from room to room, quickly gathering what he needed for the day, was creating repeated cardiovascular stress as his heart had to constantly adjust to changes in position and activity level. Robert's new approach involved moving deliberately and smoothly, avoiding sudden position changes that could spike his blood pressure. When he needed to bend down to pick something up, he learned to do it slowly, allowing his cardiovascular system time to adjust. When climbing stairs, he took them one at a time rather than rushing up quickly. These might seem like small changes, but for someone over 60, they can make the difference between a safe morning and a medical emergency. Each sudden movement, each rapid position change, each moment of rushing adds to the cumulative cardiovascular stress that can overwhelm an aging heart. The concept of movement quality became central to Robert's new morning routine. Instead of focusing on speed and efficiency, he learned to prioritize smooth, controlled movements that supported his cardiovascular health. This didn't make him less productive. It made him more sustainable and safer. Breathing became another powerful tool in Robert's heart-protective morning arsenal. His old habit of holding his breath while concentrating on tasks, something many people do unconsciously, was contributing to his morning cardiovascular stress. Breath holding increases blood pressure and heart rate while reducing oxygen delivery to the heart muscle. Robert learned to breathe consciously and consistently throughout his morning routine. Deep, slow breaths while getting dressed, while preparing breakfast, while gathering his things for the day. This conscious breathing helped maintain the calm, protective state his cardiovascular system needed. The technique he learned was simple but effective. Breathe in slowly through the nose for 4 counts, hold gently for 2 counts, then exhale slowly through the mouth for 6 counts. This pattern activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the part of your nervous system responsible for calm, restorative functions, countering the natural morning activation of the stress response. Robert practiced this breathing pattern not just during specific activities, but as a background rhythm throughout his morning. It became so natural that he often didn't even think about it. yet it provided continuous support for his cardiovascular health during those vulnerable early hours. The oxygen delivery benefits of conscious breathing were particularly important for Robert's aging cardiovascular system. As we get older, our hearts need more oxygen to function optimally, yet our lung capacity and circulation efficiency typically decline. Conscious breathing helps maximize oxygen delivery to the heart muscle, supporting its function during the demanding transition from sleep to activity. Even his breakfast timing and choices became part of Robert's heart protection strategy. Eating immediately upon waking, especially foods high in sugar or refined carbohydrates, can create additional cardiovascular stress by spiking blood sugar and requiring the heart to work harder to manage the metabolic demands of digestion. Robert learned to wait at least 30 minutes after waking before eating, allowing his natural stress hormones to stabilize first. This timing also gave his digestive system time to wake up gradually, reducing the cardiovascular stress that comes from asking multiple body systems to activate simultaneously. When Robert did eat, he chose foods that supported cardiovascular stability rather than creating additional stress. Instead of sugary cereals or pastries that could spike his blood sugar, he opted for balanced meals that included lean proteins, healthy fats, and complex carbohydrates that provided steady energy without creating blood sugar fluctuations. His breakfast choices became a continuation of his heart-protective morning routine. Oatmeal with nuts and berries, eggs with whole grain toast, or Greek yogurt with fresh fruit provided the sustained energy he needed while supporting stable blood sugar and cardiovascular function. The timing of his medications also became part of his morning heart protection strategy. Working with his doctor, Robert learned to time his blood pressure medications optimally to provide maximum protection during the vulnerable morning hours while avoiding interactions with his other morning habits like coffee consumption. Some of his medications were moved to bedtime to provide better morning coverage, while others were timed to work synergistically with his natural circadian rhythms. This careful coordination helped ensure that his cardiovascular system had maximum support during the challenging transition from sleep to activity. But perhaps the most profound change in Robert's morning routine was the transformation in his mindset. Instead of viewing morning as a time to rush into productivity, he learned to see it as a time for gentle preparation, for nurturing his body and mind for the day ahead. This shift in perspective had ripple effects throughout his entire day. When you start the morning with intention and care, rather than stress and rushing, you set a tone that influences your cardiovascular health for hours to come. Robert found that his blood pressure remained more stable throughout the day, his energy levels were more sustained, and his overall sense of well-being improved dramatically. The transformation in Robert's morning experience was remarkable. What had once been a frantic, stressful rush to start his day became a calm, gentle transition that left him feeling energized and confident rather than anxious and depleted. His blood pressure monitors showed the impact clearly. The dangerous morning spikes that had been pushing his readings into concerning territory were replaced by stable, healthy numbers that remained consistent throughout the day. His resting heart rate improved significantly, indicating that his cardiovascular system was no longer operating in a constant state of stress. But the changes went beyond just cardiovascular measurements. Robert's sleep quality improved because he was no longer ending each day with a body that had been stressed from the moment he woke up. His energy levels throughout the day became more stable and sustained, without the afternoon crashes he had previously experienced. His mental clarity and emotional well-being improved significantly as well. When you're not flooding your system with stress hormones first thing in the morning, you're better able to think clearly, make good decisions, and maintain emotional balance throughout the day. Robert's family noticed the changes too. His wife remarked that he seemed more present, less rushed, more able to enjoy their morning conversations. His children, when they called, commented that he sounded more relaxed and energetic. Even his friends noticed that he seemed calmer and more content. But perhaps most importantly, Robert felt in control of his health in a way he hadn't experienced in years. Instead of feeling like his body was working against him, he felt like he had learned to work with his body's natural rhythms and needs. 6 months after implementing his new morning routine, Robert was scheduled for his regular cardiac stress test. His cardiologist, Dr. Sarah Martinez, had been monitoring his progress closely, and she was frankly amazed by what the test results showed. Not only had Robert's cardiovascular markers improved, but some aspects of his heart function were actually better than they had been 5 years earlier. "Robert, doctor," Martinez said, reviewing the test results, "I've been practicing cardiology for 25 years, and I rarely see improvements this dramatic in patients your age. What you've accomplished with these simple morning changes is remarkable." But Dr. Martinez had noticed something else in Robert's test results that opened up an entirely new understanding of how morning routines affect heart health in people over 60. Robert's heart rate variability, a measure of how well the heart adapts to different situations, had improved significantly. This was particularly important because heart rate variability typically decreases with age, making the heart less resilient and more vulnerable to stress. The improvement suggested that Robert's gentle morning routine wasn't just protecting his heart from damage, it was actually helping his heart function more like a younger, healthier heart. Heart rate variability is controlled by the autonomic nervous system, the part of your nervous system that manages automatic functions like heartbeat, breathing, and digestion. As we age, this system becomes less flexible, less able to adapt quickly to changing circumstances. This loss of adaptability is one of the reasons why older adults are more vulnerable to cardiovascular events. But Dr. Martinez found that Robert's gentle morning routine was essentially training his autonomic nervous system to be more flexible and responsive. Each morning, as he practiced slow, mindful awakening instead of jolting his system into immediate activity, he was teaching his nervous system that it could operate in a calm, controlled manner rather than constantly being on high alert. The implications were staggering. If gentle morning routines could improve heart rate variability, they might be able to help older adults maintain cardiovascular resilience that could protect them not just from morning heart attacks and strokes, but from cardiovascular stress throughout the day. Dr. Martinez began recommending similar morning routines to other patients over 60, and the results were consistently positive. But she also discovered that there were additional elements to morning heart protection that even Robert hadn't fully explored. One of the most significant discoveries involved the relationship between morning light exposure and cardiovascular health. Robert had been focusing on the physical aspects of his morning routine, but Dr. Martinez realized that how and when he exposed himself to light in the morning was also affecting his heart health in ways that hadn't been fully appreciated. Your circadian rhythm, your body's internal clock, doesn't just control when you feel sleepy or alert. It also regulates cardiovascular function, including heart rate, blood pressure, and the production of hormones that affect your heart. When your circadian rhythm is disrupted or poorly aligned, it can create additional cardiovascular stress that compounds the problems caused by abrupt morning awakenings. Robert had been inadvertently supporting his circadian rhythm with his gentler morning routine, but Dr. Martinez realized that intentional light exposure could amplify these benefits significantly. She recommended that Robert spend at least 10 to 15 minutes outside or near a bright window within the first hour of waking, but only after he had completed his gentle transition routine. The timing was crucial. Exposing yourself to bright light immediately upon waking can actually contribute to the morning surge by triggering rapid hormone changes. But gentle light exposure after a gradual awakening helps synchronize your circadian rhythm in a way that supports cardiovascular health throughout the day. Natural sunlight is ideal for this purpose, but even sitting near a bright window can provide benefits. The key is consistency and timing. Getting regular light exposure at approximately the same time each morning to help your body maintain healthy circadian rhythms that support cardiovascular function. Robert began incorporating this light exposure into his morning routine, often sitting by his kitchen window during his mindful coffee time. He found that this not only supported his cardiovascular health, but also improved his mood and energy levels throughout the day. Dr. Martinez also discovered that the order of morning activities could significantly impact cardiovascular stress. The sequence in which Robert performed his morning tasks, from waking up to leaving the house, could either support or undermine his heart health efforts. She recommended a specific order of activities that minimized cardiovascular stress while maximizing the protective benefits of each element. First, the gentle awakening routine in bed. Then slow movement to the bathroom for lukewarm face washing. Next, gentle movement to the kitchen for water consumption and light exposure. Only then, after at least 30 minutes of gradual awakening, would coffee and breakfast be appropriate. This sequencing allowed each activity to build on the previous one, creating a cumulative protective effect rather than conflicting stresses that could overwhelm the cardiovascular system. Robert found that following this specific sequence made his entire morning feel more natural and less effortful. The research Dr. Martinez was conducting based on Robert's case began to reveal other factors that influenced morning cardiovascular health in people over 60. Social interaction, for instance, played a role that hadn't been previously appreciated. Robert lived with his wife, and their morning interactions had unknowingly been contributing to his cardiovascular stress. Not because their relationship was problematic, but because their communication patterns in the morning were activating stress responses at a time when Robert's cardiovascular system was most vulnerable. Quick, task-focused conversations about schedules, responsibilities, and problems created small but cumulative stresses that added to Robert's morning cardiovascular burden. Dr. Martinez suggested that Robert and his wife modify their morning communication to be more gentle and supportive during those crucial first hours. Instead of discussing stressful topics or rushing through logistical conversations, Robert and his wife learned to keep their morning interactions calm and positive. They would save problem-solving discussions for later in the day when Robert's cardiovascular system was more resilient. This change not only protected Robert's heart, but actually improved their relationship. Their morning conversations became more intimate and connecting, starting their days together with warmth and affection rather than stress and urgency. For people who live alone, Dr. Martinez discovered that the absence of social interaction in the morning could also affect cardiovascular health, though in different ways. The isolation and silence that some older adults experience in the morning can contribute to depression and anxiety, which create their own forms of cardiovascular stress. She began recommending that her patients who live alone find ways to incorporate gentle, positive social connection into their morning routines. This might be a brief phone call with a family member, listening to comforting music or podcasts, or even talking gently to a pet. The key was avoiding jarring or stressful inputs like news programs or social media, which could trigger stress responses, while including gentle, nurturing inputs that supported emotional and cardiovascular well-being. Dr. Martinez's research also revealed the importance of environmental factors beyond temperature and light. Noise levels in the morning, for instance, could significantly impact cardiovascular stress in people over 60. Sudden loud noises like alarm clocks, traffic, construction, or even household appliances could trigger stress responses that added to the morning cardiovascular burden. She began recommending that her patients modify their morning environment to minimize these stressful inputs. Robert learned to use a gradual wake-up alarm that slowly increased in volume rather than jarring him awake. He also discovered that certain household sounds, like the grinding of the coffee maker or the bang of cabinet doors, were creating small stress responses that accumulated throughout his morning routine. By being more mindful about the sounds in his environment and making small adjustments to reduce sudden, loud noises, Robert was able to further protect his cardiovascular system during those vulnerable morning hours. The research findings were so compelling that Dr. Martinez began developing a comprehensive protocol for morning cardiovascular protection in adults over 60. The protocol included not just the physical aspects that Robert had discovered, but also the environmental, social, and psychological factors that could either support or undermine heart health in the morning. She found that people who implemented the complete protocol experienced even greater improvements than those who focused on just one or two aspects of morning heart protection. The protocol became known as the gentle morning method, and its results were so impressive that other cardiologists began adopting it for their patients over 60. But Dr. Martinez continued to refine and expand the approach based on new discoveries about how morning habits affect the aging cardiovascular system. One of the most surprising findings involved the role of mental preparation in morning cardiovascular protection. Robert had been focusing on the physical aspects of his routine, but Dr. Martinez discovered that what he thought about and how he mentally prepared for his day could significantly impact his heart health. Waking up immediately focused on stressful thoughts about the day ahead, worries about health, family, finances, or other concerns, created a mental stress response that translated directly into cardiovascular stress. The stress hormones released by anxious or worried thinking added to the natural morning surge, compounding the risk to Robert's heart. Dr. Martinez taught Robert a simple mental preparation technique that became a crucial part of his morning routine. Instead of allowing his mind to immediately jump to worries or stressful thoughts, Robert learned to spend the first few minutes of consciousness focused on gratitude and positive intentions. This wasn't about toxic positivity or ignoring real concerns. It was about protecting his cardiovascular system during its most vulnerable time, by avoiding unnecessary mental stress that could wait until his heart was better prepared to handle it. Robert would spend a minute or two thinking about things he was grateful for, people he loved, or simple pleasures he was looking forward to that day. This gentle mental focus helped maintain the calm, protective state his cardiovascular system needed, while still allowing him to be realistic about challenges he needed to face. The impact of this mental preparation was measurable. Robert's morning blood pressure readings improved even further when he incorporated this psychological element into his routine. Dr. Martinez realized that the mind-body connection in morning cardiovascular health was stronger than anyone had previously understood. She began teaching other patients about the importance of mental preparation in morning heart protection. The technique was simple but powerful. Before getting out of bed, spend 2 to 3 minutes focusing on positive, calming thoughts, rather than immediately jumping into planning, worrying, or problem-solving. This mental preparation didn't require any special training or complicated techniques. It was simply a matter of being intentional about the first thoughts of the day, choosing focus that supported rather than stressed the cardiovascular system during those crucial transition minutes. Dr. Martinez also discovered that the way people thought about aging and their health significantly impacted their morning cardiovascular responses. Patients who viewed aging as an inevitable decline experienced more morning cardiovascular stress than those who maintained a more positive, empowered perspective about growing older. Robert had initially seen his heart problems as just another sign that his body was failing him, that aging meant accepting decreased function and increased vulnerability. But as he experienced the dramatic improvements from his new morning routine, his perspective began to shift. Instead of seeing himself as a victim of aging, Robert began to understand that he had significant power to influence his health outcomes. This shift in mindset created a positive cycle where his improved beliefs about his capabilities led to better health choices, which led to better health outcomes, which reinforced his positive beliefs. Dr. Martinez began incorporating this psychological element into her treatment plans, helping patients understand that while aging does present challenges, many of those challenges can be successfully managed or even reversed through appropriate lifestyle modifications. This empowerment approach had measurable effects on cardiovascular health. Patients who felt more in control of their health outcomes experienced less morning anxiety and stress, which translated directly into better cardiovascular function during those vulnerable early hours. The seasonal variations in morning cardiovascular health became another area of Dr. Martinez's research. She discovered that Robert's morning routine needed to be adjusted based on the time of year, the amount of natural light available, and the seasonal changes in his body's rhythms. During winter months, when natural light was limited and temperatures were colder, Robert needed to be even more careful about his morning transition. The lack of natural light could disrupt his circadian rhythms, while cold temperatures could create additional cardiovascular stress. Dr. Martinez recommended that Robert use a light therapy lamp during winter mornings to help maintain healthy circadian rhythms when natural sunlight wasn't available. She also suggested slightly extending his gentle awakening routine during colder months to give his cardiovascular system extra time to adjust. Summer mornings presented different challenges. The earlier sunrise could disrupt sleep patterns, while higher temperatures could create different types of cardiovascular stress. Robert learned to use blackout curtains to control his light exposure and adjust his room temperature to maintain optimal conditions for heart-healthy mornings year-round. These seasonal adjustments weren't complicated, but they were important for maintaining consistent cardiovascular protection throughout the year. Dr. Martinez found that patients who adapted their morning routines to seasonal changes maintained better heart health than those who used the same approach, regardless of environmental conditions. The role of sleep quality in morning cardiovascular health became another crucial area of focus. Dr. Martinez realized that Robert's morning routine was only part of the equation. The quality of his sleep the night before significantly impacted how his cardiovascular system responded to morning awakening. Poor sleep quality, whether from sleep apnea, frequent awakening, or insufficient sleep duration, made the morning cardiovascular surge more dangerous. When the body hasn't had adequate restorative sleep, it's less resilient and more vulnerable to the stresses of awakening and becoming active. Robert learned that protecting his heart began the night before with good sleep hygiene practices. This included maintaining a consistent bedtime, creating a cool, dark, quiet sleep environment, and avoiding stimulating activities or substances before bed. Dr. Martinez also discovered that the position in which people slept could affect their morning cardiovascular health. Sleeping on the left side, for instance, could sometimes put additional pressure on the heart, while sleeping on the back might contribute to sleep apnea in some individuals. Robert experimented with different sleep positions and found that sleeping on his right side with a pillow between his knees provided the best combination of comfort and cardiovascular support. This position helped maintain good circulation while reducing pressure on his heart and lungs. The evening routine became almost as important as the morning routine for cardiovascular protection. Dr. Martinez developed an evening protocol that prepared the body for heart-healthy sleep and optimal morning awakening. This evening routine included gradually dimming lights to support natural melatonin production, engaging in calming activities like gentle stretching or reading, and avoiding screens or stimulating content for at least an hour before bed. Robert found that when he followed the evening protocol consistently, his morning awakening was even easier and his cardiovascular system was more stable throughout the following day. The evening and morning routines worked together to create a complete cycle of cardiovascular protection. Dr. Martinez's research began to attract attention from other medical professionals who were seeing similar cardiovascular problems in their patients over 60. The morning surge phenomenon was more widespread than anyone had realized, and the simple solutions that Robert had discovered were helping people across the country protect their hearts. Medical conferences began featuring presentations about morning cardiovascular protection, and several major medical journals published studies confirming the effectiveness of gentle morning routines for reducing heart attack and stroke risk in older adults. The American Heart Association took notice of the research and began developing guidelines for morning cardiovascular protection in adults over 60. The recommendations closely aligned with the protocol that Robert and Dr. Martinez had developed, validating their approach with official medical endorsement. But perhaps the most compelling evidence came from the real-world results that people like Robert were experiencing. As word spread about the morning routine changes, more and more people over 60 began implementing similar strategies and reporting dramatic improvements in their cardiovascular health. Support groups formed online and in communities where people shared their experiences with morning heart protection routines. These groups became sources of encouragement and practical advice, helping people adapt the basic principles to their individual circumstances and needs. Robert became an informal spokesperson for the approach, sharing his story at senior centers, community health fairs, and medical conferences. He was passionate about helping others avoid the experience he had gone through and empowering them to take control of their cardiovascular health. The economic implications of widespread adoption of morning cardiovascular protection were significant. Heart attacks and strokes are among the most expensive medical events to treat, often costing hundreds of thousands of dollars and requiring extensive rehabilitation. If the simple morning routine changes that Robert had discovered could prevent even a small percentage of these cardiovascular events, the healthcare cost savings would be enormous. Insurance companies began taking notice, and some started offering incentives for policyholders who participated in morning cardiovascular protection programs. Dr. Martinez partnered with public health organizations to develop educational materials and programs that could be implemented at the community level. The goal was to make this life-saving information accessible to as many people over 60 as possible, regardless of their economic circumstances or access to specialized medical care. The beauty of the approach was its simplicity and accessibility. Unlike many medical interventions that require expensive equipment, medications, or procedures, morning cardiovascular protection required only knowledge and the willingness to make simple changes to daily routines. But implementation wasn't always easy, even when people understood the importance of the changes. Dr. Martinez discovered that many people over 60 had deeply ingrained morning habits that were difficult to modify, even when they knew those habits were harmful to their hearts. She began developing strategies to help people successfully transition to heart-protective morning routines. This included gradual implementation plans that allowed people to make changes slowly over several weeks, rather than trying to transform their entire routine overnight. The gradual approach was more sustainable and less overwhelming for most people. They might start with just the 5-minute gentle awakening routine for the first week, then add the modified coffee timing in the second week, then incorporate the environmental changes in the third week, and so on. Dr. Martinez also discovered that having accountability and support significantly improved people's success with implementing the changes. She began organizing group programs where people could learn the techniques together and support each other through the transition process. These group programs became highly popular and effective. Participants found that sharing their experiences and challenges with others who were making similar changes provided motivation and practical problem-solving that individual instruction couldn't match. The social connection aspect of the programs also provided additional cardiovascular benefits. Strong social connections are associated with better heart health, and the group programs created new friendships and support networks that extended beyond just the morning routine changes. Family involvement became another important factor in successful implementation of morning cardiovascular protection. When spouses, adult children, or other family members understood and supported the changes, people were much more likely to stick with the new routines. Dr. Martinez began including family education in her programs, helping relatives understand why the morning routine changes were important and how they could support their loved ones' efforts to protect their heart health. Sometimes this meant adjusting household routines to accommodate the gentler morning pace. Other times, it involved family members learning to modify their own morning behaviors to avoid creating stress for their loved one during those vulnerable early hours. The ripple effects were often positive for the entire family. When one person adopted heart-protective morning routines, other family members often found that they felt better too when they slowed down their own morning pace and reduced their stress levels. Children and grandchildren particularly benefited from learning these principles early in life. While young people might not need the same level of cardiovascular protection, developing mindful, gentle morning habits early could prevent problems later and establish lifelong patterns that support overall health and well-being. Dr. Martinez began working with schools and youth organizations to teach young people about the importance of how they start their day, planting seeds for lifelong cardiovascular health that could prevent problems decades down the road. The research continued to evolve and expand as more people adopted morning cardiovascular protection routines and shared their experiences. New variations and adaptations emerged as people with different health conditions, living situations, and lifestyles found ways to customize the approach to their specific needs. People with diabetes, for instance, needed to coordinate their morning routines with blood sugar monitoring and medication timing. Those with arthritis had to adapt the gentle movement recommendations to their mobility limitations. Individuals with depression or anxiety found that the mental preparation techniques were particularly beneficial for their overall well-being. Dr. Martinez documented these variations and began developing specialized protocols for different health conditions and circumstances. The basic principles remained the same, but the specific implementation could be tailored to maximize benefits while accommodating individual limitations and needs. The long-term data on people who had adopted morning cardiovascular protection routines was particularly encouraging. Not only did they maintain their initial improvements in heart health, but many continued to see additional benefits over time as their cardiovascular systems became more resilient and efficient. Robert's 5-year follow-up results were extraordinary. His cardiovascular health markers were better than they had been a decade earlier. His quality of life had improved dramatically. He had more energy, better mood, clearer thinking, and a profound sense of confidence in his ability to maintain his health as he continued to age. But perhaps most importantly, Robert had become an example of what's possible when we understand how to work with our body's natural rhythms and needs rather than against them. His story demonstrated that aging doesn't have to mean accepting decline and vulnerability, but can instead be a time of wisdom, empowerment, and continued vitality. As this story comes to a close, it's important to remember that Robert's transformation began with a single decision to change how he started his day. The collapse in his kitchen was a wake-up call. But it didn't have to be a death sentence. The simple changes he made to his morning routine quite literally saved his life and gave him many more years of health and happiness. The morning habit that could be silently damaging your heart after 60 is really a collection of habits, a way of approaching the start of each day that prioritizes speed and efficiency over cardiovascular health. But now you know how to change that. Now you have the tools to transform your mornings from a time of cardiovascular risk into a time of heart protection and health promotion. The beauty of these changes is that they don't require you to give up productivity or enjoyment in your life. They simply ask you to be more mindful and gentle with your cardiovascular system during those crucial morning hours when it's most vulnerable to stress and damage. Every morning you have a choice. You can continue shocking your cardiovascular system into activity, creating cumulative stress that damages your heart over time. Or you can choose to work with your body's natural rhythms, protecting your heart while actually improving your energy, mood, and overall well-being throughout the day. The research is clear, the results are documented, and the approach is accessible to virtually everyone. The question isn't whether these changes can help you, but whether you'll make the commitment to implement them consistently. Your heart has served you faithfully for decades. It's carried you through every moment of your life, every joy, every challenge, every experience that has made you who you are. It deserves your protection and care, especially as you age and become more vulnerable to cardiovascular stress. Starting tomorrow morning, you can begin protecting your heart with every choice you make about how to wake up, how to move, what to drink, and how to transition into your day. The 5-minute rule, the coffee timing, the temperature considerations, the gentle movements, the conscious breathing, the mental preparation, all of these elements working together to create a morning routine that supports rather than stresses your cardiovascular system. You don't have to implement everything at once. Start with the gentle awakening routine, spending 5 minutes transitioning gradually from sleep to wakefulness. Add the other elements gradually over the following weeks as they become natural and automatic. Remember that consistency is more important than perfection. Every morning that you choose heart protection over cardiovascular stress is a morning that you're adding to your lifespan and improving your quality of life. Even if you're not perfect, even if you occasionally slip back into old habits, every gentle morning is a gift to your future self. The support of family and friends can make this journey easier and more sustainable. Share what you've learned with people who care about you. Help them understand why these changes are important and how they can support your efforts to protect your heart. Consider joining or forming a support group with others who are making similar changes. The encouragement and practical advice you'll receive from people who understand your challenges can make the difference between temporary changes and lasting transformation. Monitor your progress, not just through formal measurements like blood pressure readings, though those are important, but also through how you feel. Notice your energy levels throughout the day, your mood stability, your sleep quality, your overall sense of well-being. These subjective improvements are often the first signs that your cardiovascular system is responding positively to your new morning routine. Be patient with yourself as you make these changes. It takes time for new habits to feel natural and automatic. It takes time for your cardiovascular system to adapt and show measurable improvements. But the benefits begin immediately, even if you can't always feel them right away. Most importantly, remember that you have more control over your cardiovascular health than you might have realized. While aging does present challenges, many of those challenges can be successfully managed through simple, sustainable lifestyle modifications like the ones Robert discovered. You don't have to be a victim of cardiovascular disease. You don't have to accept that heart problems are an inevitable part of aging. You have the power to protect your heart, to maintain your health, and to enjoy many more years of vitality and independence. The morning habit that could be silently damaging your heart after 60 is within your power to change. The tools and knowledge you need are now in your hands. The only question remaining is whether you'll use them. If this information has been helpful to you, please share it with others who might benefit. Heart disease is still the leading cause of death for people over 60, but it doesn't have to be. With the right knowledge and the willingness to make simple changes, we can all enjoy healthier hearts and longer, more vibrant lives. Leave a comment below and let me know which of these morning changes you're most excited to try. Share your age and any heart health concerns you have. Your story might inspire someone else to take action to protect their own heart. And please subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss future information that could transform your health and extend your life. We're building a community of people who refuse to accept that aging has to mean declining health, who are committed to staying strong, vital, and healthy for as long as possible. Until next time, be gentle with your heart, especially in those crucial morning hours. Your cardiovascular system will thank you, your family will thank you, and years from now, your healthier, stronger heart will thank you for the choices you make starting tomorrow morning. Remember, you have the power to protect your heart. You have the knowledge to make the right changes. Robert's story proves that it's never too late to start taking better care of your cardiovascular health. All that's left is taking action. Your heart is counting on you.